Hi, welcome back to another installment of the Lunchroom. And this week got a phone call, and there was a Liebherr track crane. It has a Liebherr V12. The engine's about 1,000 horsepower, pretty big crane. And you're going to see in a second, I was sent a little file on my phone to take a look at what the engine was doing. And we were trying to figure out what was going on, what happened to it. The little history: the engine had been totally rebuilt by Liebherr and was running good, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it just started doing this. So let's take a look at this, and then we'll talk about what it was. Here's the 12-cylinder pump. It's an inline 12-cylinder Bosch pump, similar to the P7100, but a bigger pump. It has an electronic governor on the back instead of a throttle arm, and the ECM controls this with a pulse width signal. And here's a close-up of the governor, and that is the coil that pulls the rack in and out in that housing. And then this is the pigtail that has the wiring that goes into the pump. Some of these pumps have a speed sensor built inside that governor housing. The later generations with the small tone wheel. If one of the fingers breaks off the tone wheel, and that has happened, then the engine will shut down because the signal becomes unstable coming out of the pump. The pump's primary, or I should say the ECM's primary speed input for the engine is a magnetic pickup off of the flywheel housing. It screws into and watches the flywheel teeth, and that goes to the ECM, and that's how it knows the RPM of the engine. And then the ECM looks at input from the throttle position to know what kind of horsepower you're desiring out of the crane. It also has some feedback from a boost sensor, and then the pump input. And it's a pretty simple feedback system, and that's how it works. And the ECM was having a real time controlling this, and it was basically the ECM was throttling on, throttling off, throttling on, throttling off, and finally it just decided to shut it down. So we checked the ohm resistances going into the pump, and everything looked normal going into the pump. We checked the battery and ground on the ECM, and everything looked normal there. We took out the speed sensor on the flywheel housing and checked it, and it looked good. The ohm range was right. We cleaned the end off. There's always particles of metal that'll get on there. We cleaned all that off, put it back in. You screw it in until it touches the center of a tooth and back it off about a little less than a half a turn and lock it. That made no difference. It still ran like this. And then we hooked up to the engine with software, and there was over 100 faults on the ECM was condemning itself as a bad intelligent device. And so that's the information that we had. And from there, we were able to figure out what was wrong with it. So take that, think about it, put some comments down. What do you think could have been the problem? I will tell you this: it's not what you think it is. And so I'll put the answer up in a few days or next week, and we'll see how well you did on putting your thinking caps on. Again, remember, we're all here to learn. Thanks for joining me on Engine Shop Joe. See you soon.